Alright everyone, welcome back to another video. Last time we left off with part 4, The New Day, since 1919. Talking about a little bit after, this will be talking about a little bit after the Second World War, and this just gives a rundown of what we're going to be getting into with part 4. I don't think this is the last part, I think there's one more part after this, but we're very much closing in on the end of the book, very sadly. For now, on to the reaction to isolation. President Wilson was determined to go to Paris in person to take part in the making of the peace treaties. He was criticized for this, but he had to deal with the responsible leaders of Britain, France, and the other great powers, and he felt that he could negotiate more freely at first hand. More dubious was his failure to make any leading Republican a member of his negotiating team. The Republicans therefore felt he was running peacemaking too much as a one-man show. There were two things that he particularly had in mind: a strong League of Nations to diminish the risk of future wars, and self-determination in fixing the new frontiers according to the wishes of their local population. As with most peace settlements, after a general war, the treaties represented a series of compromises. The French felt that not enough had been done to assure that Germany would be harmless in the future. There were pacifists who felt that too many concessions had been made to the French intransigence. Russia, then in the throes of civil war, was not consulted at all. Many people in the United States wanted to get back quickly to business as usual, instead of worrying about Macedonia and Mesopotamia. When Wilson returned to the United States, a group of senators, led by Henry Cabot Lodge of Massachusetts, decided to attack the Covenant of the League of Nations by reservations, which would free the United States from any obligation to defend foreign countries. Wilson said that this would cut the heart of the League and refused to compromise. He made a series of speeches for the League, but was immobilized by a paralytic stroke in the midst of his campaign. Congress was already controlled by the Republicans, and in 1920 they nominated Senator Warren G. Harding and the Democrats James Cox, both newspaper publishers from Ohio. The Republican victory was overwhelming. The Harding administration made a separate peace with the Central Powers and ignored altogether the peace treaties and the League of Nations. There was a strong reaction against the war. But there is a distinction to be made here. It was not a reaction to pacifism, or Robert La Follette, the leader of the opposition to the war, would have done better when he ran for president on a third-party ticket in 1924. Only a minority felt that the United States could, or should, have avoided entering the war, but there was an annoyed feeling that the war should have stayed away from America and confined itself to Europe, where it belonged. It was the only war which produced no presidential candidates trading on their military prestige. Something was done for peace, however. In Harding's time, with the able assistance of Charles Evans Hughes as Secretary of State, there was signed a naval limitation agreement affecting the American, British, Japanese, French, and Italian navies. Those of Germany and Russia had been temporarily eliminated by the war. But in general, the United States retired within itself. Isolation showed itself in other ways. A high protective tariff was adopted, and numerical restrictions imposed on foreign immigration. These laws established a quota, fixing the number of immigrants from any country at a percentage of those of that nationality already domiciled in the United States. This was done deliberately to favor the older immigration from Northwest Europe against the newer from the Southern and Eastern Europe. Another symptom of national isolationism was the revival of the I can't say that of the Klan. YouTube won't let me say that word, but you can know guess what I'm talking about. 3K'd Klan. That could be directed primarily against the blacks, as the Reconstruction Klan had been, but even more against the Roman Catholics, like the old Know Nothing Party of the 1850s. On the issue of opposing the Klan, the Democratic Convention of 1924 was deadlocked for 3 weeks, and 103 ballots between William Gibbs McAdoo, Wilson's son-in-law, who wished to ignore the question, and the Catholic Alfred E. Smith, the governor of New York. The great failure of the Harding administration, like Grant's, was in the appointment of unit men to office. Secretary of the Interior Albert B. Fall went to prison for his part in selling government oil wells, Elk Hills and Teapot Dome, to private interests, in return for a personal loan. Attorney General Harry Daugherty, resigned under fire. Colonel Charles Forbes of the Veterans Bureau was convicted of graft. Harding died in the middle of his first term and was succeeded by Vice President Calvin Coolidge, who easily won, running against John W. Davis, the Democrat, and Robert La Follette, the Progressive, in the election of 1928. Coolidge was a taciturn Yankee from Massachusetts. He initiated few changes and resisted the farmers' clamor for price supports. He accepted the Kellogg-Briand peace agreement, which, in general terms, repudiated war but provided no machinery to enforce peace. Yeah, so the United States, just making sure there was no more to say, but the United States has always kind of been an isolationist nation. Really comes in with the idea of the Monroe Doctrine, actually. A lot of that comes from that, and even a little bit before, where a lot of Americans were like, yeah, we don't really want any part to do with Europe. Broke away from them, we're done with them. Yeah, they helped us, and a lot of the founding fathers had a little bit more love for Europe. You have, for instance, Thomas Jefferson, for instance, really much loved the French as well. So did Benjamin Franklin, also loved the French. Um, quite a bit, actually. So the founding fathers did love them, but after a lot of them are gone, um, America really has no love for Europe. Um, really kind of wants to be on its own in its own little hemisphere. And that really doesn't change after the First World War. Now it changes after the Second World War, um, but even then, if you look at maybe how people feel now, things have kind of started to retract back to that isolationist thought. Americans in general are very isolationist. It's just the truth. Um, and while there was a big period of being on the world stage, it's not really in their heart. At least not, especially not after World War One. They really, really, really wanted nothing to do with this war. They know they had to be in it because of what Germany did, but they didn't want to necessarily. But now we will get into the picture. So on the left here is badly weakened by his fight for the League of Nations in Paris. Wilson returned to Washington, where he suffered a paralytic stroke. When he did recover, he lacked physical vigor. Yeah, Wilson suffers a major, major stroke. For basically the rest of his presidency, no one barely saw him, besides his wife. There's a big theory that his wife was actually kind of president. Now, I don't necessarily believe that, because there were moments where he would walk and stuff like that. He doesn't survive much longer after being president, really. Um, but I do think that he did have some say. Now, maybe when he first had the stroke, it's hard to say. But yeah, there is an argument to be had that potentially his wife was actually running um, the office of the presidency at the time. And the League of Nations, I didn't really touch on that, but Americans really didn't like it. Part of that whole isolationist thing. And I know Wilson fought for it. It's one of the reasons that the Democrats kind of lose is because he fought so hard for it. So a lot of people felt like, well, you're just trying to pull us back into all this European nonsense. We don't really want to be in it. Stop doing it. And that's why so handily the League of Nations gets obliterated. Um, People don't really want it. They didn't really want it. So at the bottom here is a picture taken on the 11th of November, 1918, showing the crowds in front of the Chamber of Deputies in Paris, awaiting the official announcement of the armistice. Yeah, so the armistice obviously very important. Something they didn't really go over, and it's mostly because they're very much looking at the American side of things. A lot of concessions were made to France. Um, the people that were more pacifist, they weren't wrong. A lot of concessions had been made to France. France wanted to be pretty harsh on the Germans. That's why if you look at a lot of the harsher uh, things in the Treaty of Versailles, um, they mostly come from France reacting to the Franco-Prussian War. A lot of the things Germany kind of did to them, but yeah, just a little interesting. Is below here is a picture taken the nope, wrong one. Below is Senator Henry Cabot Lodge, who was opposed to the League of Nations and was a leader of the Republican Party's shift to isolationism. You know, they say a shift to isolationism, but that's not quite true. America had always been very isolationist, especially after the American Civil War. There's a big, big push for it. But even before then, America was still very isolationist. So it's not necessarily a shift, it's more of a reaffirmment, you could say. But yeah. And then at the right here is the signing of the treaty of the World War I peace treaty at Versailles. Yeah, so it's the signing of the Treaty of Versailles. Obviously, the United States, like they said, they don't really have much say in this, which you could say to some degree does have an effect on Germany as well. A lot of the United States saying, hey, we're just going to be isolationist, we're out of here. Them not really agreeing with or not really signing the treaties or anything like that does have a part to play. Not gonna disagree with that, but yeah, what a interesting and calamitous treaty, you could say. Is above here is Calvin Coolidge, the 13th President of the United States, with his wife, Grace. He had been Harding's vice president, succeeding him on his death on the 2nd of August, 1923. Calvin Coolidge, a very interesting president. He is one of those presidents that didn't talk a lot, had a very dry sense of humor, but he is a very well-respected president. He didn't necessarily do anything bad. He didn't necessarily do anything overly good. Just he was good. He was all right, you know. And sometimes you need that. Sometimes people, that's all they really want, actually. At the bottom here is President Warren G. Harding throwing out the first ball of the baseball season, Washington, D.C., on the 12th of April, 1922. All right, so the second picture, I can't really show most of it. You can kind of see that guy there, but I don't think I'll be dinged for that. I can't really show most of it because I think YouTube will ding it. So I got to kind of cover it with my hand, but I will still try to show some. There, see, you can kind of see. Look at that. Wow, isn't that so great? Yeah. But at the right here is during the 1920s, the Klan became popular again. This parade was staged in Washington. Yeah, the Klan, I'm going to have to do away just so you kind of saw it. Kind of saw it. The Klan became really popular again. It was more or less destroyed under Grant. So why the justice system really gets set up and all of that is to destroy the Klan. And it does. It gets more or less obliterated. Comes back kind of during Wilson, actually. They didn't really touch on this. They're really talking about after Wilson, but it has a lot to do with Wilson himself. Wilson himself plays a Klan movie in the White House. It's the first movie to ever be shown. Birth of a Nation is the name of the movie. Wilson is the one that shows that in the White House. Wilson giving support to them in any way kind of revitalizes them. It's like, oh, the president's on our side. and they don't really talk about it because this book, this book, I'm gonna be honest, was released at a time where Wilson still had a very good popular opinion. Not so much anymore. Not so much anymore. His popular opinion has very much fallen, and a lot of that has to do with his relation to the Klan. At the left here is after the Harding administration, many scandals came to light, some of them involving oil company kickbacks. It is probable that Harding never knew the whole truths about these scandals. But he knew enough in 1923 to make him sick at heart, and this may have had something to do with his collapse and death. Yeah, there's a lot of presidents who become president and then kind of get used by their people that they help get in power. Not surprising, happens a lot throughout history. You have a lot of people who get put into power, bring their friends or bring people that, hey, you think you'd be good in this position. Those people are not good for that position, not good for them. And then the person didn't necessarily do anything, but they get the blame because they're the ones that brought them in. So, kind of happens to Harding. It happens to Grant, especially. Grant's whole presidency is seen as very negative because of that. Really unfortunate. Grant, pretty good guy. Uh, the people that he put into power, not so much. He should have had if he only could have known, I'm sure it would have been better. But above here is Albert B. Fall, who had been Harding's Secretary of the Interior, the villain of the Teapot Dome scandal, shown at the left. Arriving at the District of Columbia Supreme Court on the charge of bribery concerning the Elk Hills Naval Oil Reserve leasing. Yeah, this is a pretty big deal. It's super, super, super bad because people already didn't like big oil barons. I mean, Theodore Roosevelt, all that stuff had got kind of broken up. And then you have people in the government being like, well, I'll help you out. Pretty bad. Obviously, he got charged and got in a lot of trouble for it, but still, not great that he did it at all. And then at the right here is a photograph of the Senate investigating committee during the hearing of the Teapot Dome scandal on the 24th of March, 1924. Yeah, obviously Congress is going to investigate this. This is a pretty big breach of Congress. And you almost, here's the thing. There's contempt of court or contempt of Congress, and you got a bunch of these charges like that, where it's like, oh, there's a regular court, and then there's like a Congress one version of it. You don't want those. You don't want the Congress ones. They're way, way worse. Um, what he did was tantamount to treason. You could really argue that. Now, did they? Not really. But they could have. They really could have. But, yeah. But, with that, that's going to do it for this video. If you guys liked the video, leave a like. If you have any ways to improve on these videos, leave a comment down below. I just appreciate your feedback. And as always, subscribe. It really does help out the channel. Thank you.